Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Chrissy. Now today I'm going to be doing another travel tips video. It's going to be on Dar es Salaam. I spent about 2 months in Dar es Salaam, and as you can imagine I have so many tips to give you guys, and hopefully you find this video exciting and interesting if you plan on ever visiting Dar es Salaam. This video is going to be less on logistics and more of encounters that I had, which you might also have and might want to consider if you're going to be visiting. So the first thing is on transportation. So you can get around so many different ways. You have got taxis, you have got dalas, which are buses, you've got pikis, which are motorcycles, and you have got your bajajas, which are like tuk-tuks. Basically tuk-tuks. So yeah, I would suggest to everyone traveling, especially more so if you're on a budget, but even if you're not on a budget, definitely go on a dala. They're a very convenient mode of transport, very cheap as well. To most places in the city around Dar es Salaam, they charge about 500 Tanzanian shillings. Very cheap to get around, and they're also very reliable, and you know exactly where you're going because they'll have the names of the places where it's going printed on the bus, so it's actually really difficult to get lost when you're up and about, you know, so definitely consider that mode of transport. The only cons that I do have about traveling on a dala is that everyone on the bus is sweaty, including yourself, because it's going to be very hot. So just yeah, keep that in mind. Probably carry around with you a spray bottle or a spritz or something. And the other thing is on safety. Make sure that you're not using your if you have a smartphone, not using that next to the window, because you probably will get that snatched off you. So yeah, just keep that in mind. 2 is on sightseeing. So if you're going to go to Dar es Salaam and expect to spend a week in sightseeing, you're going to be very disappointed. So I would suggest a day or 2 on sightseeing, depending on whatever you want to see, and then spending the rest of it doing other things, either visiting beaches, visiting national parks in nearby cities, because otherwise you're going to be absolutely bored to death. Unless you want to have a holiday where you're just chilling by the pool, then by all means do. While I'm on that, if you're planning going to the Tarangira National Park, just make sure you don't wear anything bright blue, because you are going to be the main source of attraction for the tsetse flies, so definitely don't do that. Third one is more to do with how the locals will relate to you, depending on where you are obviously. But if you go to a busy place, if you go to Kariakoo or visit some of the markets there, you've got a great fish market, and you have the Kisutu market, which is, you know, great, so fresh fruit and veg market. You're probably going to hear people shouting Mzungu to you if you are white. That can sometimes be offensive. I would say just use instinct in terms of how to respond to it. But generally people will use that word just in a sort of endearing sense, so a lot of the time it's not meant to be offensive. Some of the time though, it can be a way to distract you while somebody else tries to rip you off, but generally the locals are very great at this. And in my experience of it, when my friend actually tried to get robbed by somebody, everyone came to his defense, and yeah, it was sorted out within minutes. I mean, it happened all very quickly, but I would say don't worry too much about that. Make sure that you keep your valuables away from, you know, plain sight, because obviously that would be attracting people who would intend on pickpocketing you. Another thing is, if you are black and visiting Dar es Salaam, everyone there will just assume that you speak Kiswahili. They have to yeah, just let them know you don't speak it, but also make an effort with the language, which brings me on to the next point. And I mentioned this in my Zanzibar video, but definitely make an effort with the language when you're there. At least know a few phrases: abade yako, mambo, kesho, tutaonana kesho, things like that. The everyday life is in Kiswahili, so if you make an effort in terms of the language, I think it makes for a better experience for yourself and also in terms of interacting with the locals. The next tip is on haggling. So if you're going to be visiting a lot of the markets, you have to be prepared to haggle unless you don't really mind getting ripped off. It's always a good idea to get the best price for whatever you're buying. So do some research online, make sure that you know what the price range is for what you're getting, and try and haggle and get it to a good price so you can go away feeling good about that purchase. The next tip is don't be afraid to explore. A lot of people will go there and they will feel as though they can't go to certain places because they read bad press about those places. I would say go and experience everything. Obviously use your instinct to guide you and go and see what it's about. Everyone will have a completely different experience of any place that you plan on visiting, so don't be afraid to do that. I mean, a lot of the time I would just grab a map, have GPS on my phone and just walk around the city and get to know the city and the streets. And in that way I also got really interested in the architecture of the city and how that meshes with the culture, and it was a very, very exciting sort of eye-opening trip. Whether you're by yourself or whether you're with a group of people, go and explore the city. Suburban areas are very, very different to what the city's like, and if you're staying in the city and just going to experience the city, I would also suggest that you go into the suburban areas and see what it's about, see a different side of Dar es Salaam. The next tip is on experiencing the city. I feel as though if you're a male or female, you might have two different experiences of the same place or the same street or the same supermarket, just because I feel as though the city, in my opinion, was slightly male orientated. So a lot of the restaurants or pubs and bars, if you're a woman and you go in there, it looks really awkward for you to be in there on your own. It gives off the wrong perceptions about you, so maybe go around there in a group. If you're a lady and you're traveling on your own, then maybe try and avoid certain crowded bars on your own. Just use your intuition, use your instinct, let that guide you. For a man, a lot of the sort of coffee shops, a lot of the restaurants, a lot of the bars will normally be wide open for you, and it's normally easier, I think, in that society for men to socialize in open spaces. And especially if you're into football, you will have a grand time because they love their football so much, and it's a very sort of male testosterone orientated time. So for men, that's always a wonderful time. Go in, get stuck in with the locals, whatever they're doing, make sure that you interact. It's a great way to get to know new things, new places about the city, and have new experiences. A tip, or not really a tip, is to go or not to go to the slums or the slum areas. Depending on what you want to do there, it's quite a controversial topic, and there's a lot on the internet about it, but I would say just to be mindful when you go there, because you're going to see other people's way of life and how they cope on a day-to-day basis. It's not like going to a zoo, it's not a theme park, it's not a game, it's actual human life. So just bear that in mind if you plan on going to see some of the slum areas there, and make up your own mind on whether you want to do that or not. However, I will say, if you just go to Dar es Salaam to go to the slum areas and then leave, I don't think you will get a great representation of what Dar es Salaam is about, or even in Tanzania. The next tip is on toilets. Yes, toilets. Dar es Salaam, and in fact I think most places in Tanzania, will have the squatting toilets. So a lot of the time you will have a bucket of water and the squatting toilet. So if you have come from a country where you're not used to that, make sure you carry around with you some tissue or some wipes if you're not used to that. But if you are, you've always got a bucket of water and all is good. The next tip is to take your own laxatives. for several reasons. You're probably going to have some sort of constipation while you're there. You're probably going to have tummy ache, or just anything related to, you know, bowel movement and just keeping yourself healthy and going regularly to the bathroom. Not a nice topic, but yeah, make sure you take that with you. I mean, the reason why I mention this is because, number one, you're probably going to have some sort of a tummy ache because it's change of food when you're there compared to where you're from. Also, while I'm on that, have bottled water at all times and try and avoid salads unless you're in a hotel, but definitely experience the food culture while you're there. So, you know, that's one thing. The second thing is when you go to the Duka Ladawas, basically means medicine shop. It's kind of like a pharmacy, but you know, you don't have pharmacists there. Make sure that you know exactly why you're there. So make sure you explain your symptoms very, very well. And this is where knowing a little bit of Kiswahili really helps, because you might end up having antibiotics for a tummy ache and you don't want to be doing that. The next tip I have is for you to just be patient and breathe and be prepared for uncertainty. It will almost always certainly happen. I mean, the way I planned my trip isn't exactly how it went, but nonetheless, it was a very exciting, very fun trip. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is mainly because of timekeeping, and also in terms of the sort of lifestyle and the culture there. I would say there, because of the weather, because of the culture, and because of the busyness of Dar es Salaam, everything moves at a different pace. So in terms of traffic, if you want to get into town for the fish market and you live out of town, you probably need to set off, say, at around 4 a.m. depending on where you are in the city, but you would need to get up really, really early to be able to get into town at a suitable time, because the traffic is ridiculous. So keep that in mind. Is having the time to relax and just enjoy your experience. If you're anything like me, you will probably get there with your, DSLR camera, your phone, your iPad, and a little mini camera to take around with you. And all of that is all well and good. But when you're on holiday, sometimes you just need to have that time to just internalize everything and just have a lovely time taking in those memories. A lot of the time I would take a photo of a building or the grass or something because it looks different, and half the time not remember why I took that picture. So yeah, make sure that you take the time to enjoy the experience for what it is, like enjoying a sunset or enjoying, a building. And those are, I think, my greatest memories of being there. Just taking the time to enjoy the experience of wherever I am. Final one is on flirting. So when you're around there, you might, if you're a lady, get a few marriage proposals. And don't be freaked out, because a lot of the time that is how the men flirt, I have figured out. I might be wrong, but I have been told that that's how a lot of the men flirt when they're there, and I did experience that a lot. So if you are obviously interested, then by all means go for it, but don't take it too seriously if somebody asks you to marry them on the first day that you meet them. It's not a real marriage proposal, it's just, a way of flirting. So yeah, there you have it. Nothing is as you expect it to be, guys. So make sure you just have fun with everything, take everything in your stride, make sure that you keep safe, use your intuition and instinct, and have a great time exploring Dar es Salaam. Bye guys. A really great book that I found was this one by Kate Fox, and it's called Watching the English. She's an anthropologist, and I really like her approach to the way she describes basically English culture